This is the continuing saga of making Waterloo Goods Depot, and I'm covering most of the actions that I'm doing on this because I hope it will be of interest and of assistance to others who wish to make models in using GMAX for trains railway simulator. So what I've done since the last video is I've started to punch through the roof sections, which are now all complete, right the way through to the end here, in the same process as I was doing to create these. I punched through there in that roof, and it's going to be the roof lights here, these skylights, which are somewhat foreshortened by the angle of this photograph, but I'm going to come back to that. So what I basically needed was long rectangular holes of the right size in the roof, and I'm doing it by using the Boolean function. And if I look at this, you see it's back to being an editable poly, but previously it was a compound object. That's one of these here, top left, and as opposed to a standard primitive. I don't use the third one, patch grids. No, I don't use those. Okay, so what have I done? Well, I've created two great long boxes here which will extend through the mesh. There it is, end on the mesh. That's those two blue boxes there, and they're going to punch through the roof. These boxes here are just guides, which I will delete, but I like to use boxes as guides. They're very helpful indeed. You'll recall that I've used one to get that angle along the front there. So what am I going to do? Well, what I can do is I can individually use these to delete from this mesh, or I can join them together. Let's try that. They're both editable polys, I think. Yes. So we can attach them together so they form a single poly, and then come away and then select the roof. Again, remember, we're not worrying about these little boxes, they're just for position. So I selected the roof, and instead of it being a standard primitive, I'm going to call it a compound object, and I'm going to select this one, Boolean. And that offers you to pick an operand B. In other words, this, whatever mesh you now pick, will be deducted, removed from the compound object. So pick operand B, and I'm going to pick these, and there we are, and it's deleted that space, that part of the mesh. And then what I like to do immediately is to convert that back to an editable poly, so as not to create any difficulties. And I've saved copies. This is the color of the box that I used to create these spaces here, and this is the color of the box that I've used to create these spaces here. So let's take I always like to use a clone of these, so I take a clone of this one and take it across, and I can position it exactly so it's the roof that I previously punched a hole through. And you'll see why I want to use this, because it's just set as a box at the moment. So convert it to an editable poly, get onto the vertex, and this time I'm going to reduce the vertex down so it's inside the roof mesh, and I'm going to pick up these two and lift them up so they're well inside. There we are. And I'm just going to zoom in on these just to make sure we're in the right place. We're actually a tad over. So that's a technical term, by the way, a tad. Just means a bit. And get that positioned in place. Okay. Now you can see it's in there. So it's filled up the hole which I previously punched out. So what I want to do now is to give it a texture, and I'm going to create a new texture, and I'm going to call it roof light, and it's the diffuse color drop it down to here, roof lights, TGA, open that one, and then I want opacity, and I want a BMP file, there it is, BMP, and that simply says which parts of that TGA file are going to be shown. Okay, so we've got our new texture over here. Let's go down here and have a look, see if it's an awful mess or whether I can actually create something. Roof light, there we go, that goes on there, and unwrap, and you can see that it's partly transparent, partly it's got some black on it. So now we've got to do some editing, and the first thing we want to do is to select the face that we want to edit, which will be this one, and turn off all the others and planar it. There we are, and it's given us a stretch that all the way along there, and you can just about make out that there is a difference in the colour between here and here to show that there's glass. Now what I'm going to do, I suppose what I could do is I could look at this and try and work out how many panes of glass there are. Pretty indistinct. What should we say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. There's at least 10. So that would be 30. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to give that, stretch that, repeat it 30 times. And it's in the wrong direction because it's going that way. So back to planar, rotate it 90 degrees to get the correct orientation, and let's try again. There we are, 30. And if we zoom in, let's unselect that face, and if we zoom in, you can see that we've got, let's make sure we've got the texture correction on, we've got a very simple design there, which is just going to do the trick, I think, for the roof lights. It also means we can look down into the depot, which I think is almost as important as getting the effect right. Underneath, let's do that face. Let's select our object. Make sure we've got that face selected, yes, because it's all over the place there. Let's planar it. Now I don't think, let's just planar at 10. Yes, it also needs to be rotated 90 degrees, and then because it's the same top or bottom, you can just rotate it whichever way you like. Okay, now looking at it end on, there are faces in that piece which are buried or butting up against faces of the roof, and if we look here, this is the side view on, you can see there are faces, polys. Let's just collapse it down. There are polys which we don't really need. It's still not quite right in position, so I can adjust that a little more, I think. Hopefully it'll let me. May not seem very much, especially because when you're zoomed in you're only dealing with parts of an inch, but visually it can make quite a difference to a model. There we are. Okay, so those were vertices. Now let's have a look at polygons. And basically what we can do is we only want the polygon that's facing up, which we're looking at edge on there, or down, which is what we're looking at there. So the side one and this end one here, we can just highlight it and delete it. And we're changing a 6 poly mesh to a 2 poly mesh. There we are. Might not seem like a great saving, but believe me, when you get to the finished product, the finished item, the only other thing I want to do here now is to reset it, make sure it's absolutely correctly proportioned. That's all, and then let's swing it over, and you can see here, if we zoom in here, There's no polys there now. It's just the upper one and the lower one. So let's rotate this. Y-axis is it? Yeah. Rotated it 180 degrees, move it along, and then we just need to zoom in up here and we should be correct. Just to position, get the last bit of position of it. Yes. And so there we are. If we look back here, we've got our roof. Now I know that the roof itself still has to be textured, but I just wanted to show you how I'm doing the roof lights. And you'll notice, by the way, that since my previous video, number whatever it was, that I've actually slightly altered the overall width of all of these, very slightly, between just over 5%. And now if we look down on them up here, the two roads that come off on the Ordnance Survey map that come off the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board line, which is underneath this, which is the Liverpool Overhead Railway, which ran above the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board line. The two lines that come off now enter the building. It'll be one at the door of that building. So it'll be coming in to here. And I believe, I'm trying to convince myself that that little bit there is the actual curve of the track, there and there. But I think I'm close enough. Okay, so having done that with the with this bit of mesh, I'm now going to bring this one over. Let's just go into the side view, because it's going to be it's a copy of the block I used to punch a hole in here, and this is where these guides come in. And if I bring it over to there, make sure we're right, see we're a little way out, bring it over, back a fraction from on the mouse, there we are, and I just again adjust the vertices. Let's bring that down. You don't have to be too precise, I don't think, about as long as they're inside the roof. The actual thickness. Remember, we're going for the effect here. There's no way I'm going to be able to put in all the detail because it'd just be immense. Maybe a bit too far down, maybe up to about there. Just guessing, just making it adequate, making it sufficient for the look of it. Take that down a tad. There we are. Okay, and so there it is, and I'm going to do exactly what I did with the other one, which is I'm going to apply the roof light, and let's have a look at that. Let's select the face and let's planar it and then rotate it 90 degrees. This is the bitmap file, map number 6, map number 7. Map number 6 is the actual image that you'll see. And then instead of making it 30, because it is a little bit shorter, I think I can make it, well, let's try 28. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Again, I'm checking down here. So I'm trying to keep this a similar look to the other, but I'm not trying to line it up, I'm not being that precious. Collapse all, polys, and I know I can take those ones out. That's those two end ones, and there's the edge. one there, and let's just make sure it's reset the X form on it, and I've set that to the center and X form bit, but I'll probably need to do that again when I come to developing the whole thing. So there we are. Just made a clone and just rotated it 180 degrees, and now I'm going to move it across to here and make sure we're in the right place. Okay, and that's our roof. Don't really need that highlighted, do I? And now the next thing will be to continue this with the other roofs, which is what I'll do. And then once I have all the roofs textured as well, I've got to create a texture for the roof. Some bland colour, I think, is best for that. Then I can group them and raise them up into the correct position, and then get on with the walls. But it means, of course, that if I just hide that for a moment, I'm not sure if you can actually perceive it really, see it clearly on the video, but there is it's not precise. Transparent would mean that you couldn't see any effect of the glass, so it is near transparent. It's translucent with a high degree of transparency. I suppose that's the correct way of saying it. And those are my two position pieces. If I unhide everything, that includes my other position box, which I shall lose. And there's that wall section grouped away, which we can hide, which I'll come back to. Okay, so a relatively short video, but just to show you how I am progressing with the roofs. And the next video will show the roofs, I hope, more or less complete and ready to be moved into position. So if you have any queries or questions or comments about any of this, please do post them, especially if you are a GMAX model maker. I'm happy to answer them, and please look out for the next video.